Money Talk with Melanie features lively discussions of a wide range of global, domestic, and kitchen table financial topics. Guest interviews include entrepreneurs, CEOs, and politicos who are experts in their fields. Be sure to listen up. This is important because it's your money. Your money. Be sure to listen to Money Talk with Melanie. Money Talk with Melanie. Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time on 98.7 The Coast.
And good evening. Welcome to another edition of Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your host, Melanie Collette, broadcasting live from beautiful Wildwood, New Jersey. It is 7:02 and the sun is still out, and it's actually pretty nice weather outside. Well, it's in the 50s, not like super springy warm yet, but we'll take it. It's in the 50s. I don't have to wear a coat, so that totally works. But it's a beautiful evening here in Wildwood, New Jersey on 98.7 The Coast. And this evening we have Agile performance marketing expert Wes Azzaidani, and he's going to talk to us about how startup leaders make twice the money in half the time. I can't wait to hear that. And then we're going to switch gears at 8 o'clock and speak with author Stephen J. Spence and talk to him about the truth about our monetary system. Can't wait to talk to him either, because he is really going to draw back the curtain on our monetary system, and I just think reveal things that many people don't know about our monetary system. His book reads, I don't know if anyone is familiar with the For Dummies series. There's like tons of those for subject matters for the For Dummies series. There's computer programming, politics, economics. It's very simplified version of things that people like, I don't know, the government loves, that Joe Q public generally doesn't know about the way our monetary system works. So it's an important conversation to have. So I'm looking forward to having author Stephen J. Spence on as well. As far as the Melanie Media recap, I was on Newsmax on American Agenda on Monday at 3:30. We talked a bit about critical race theory and whether or not it's in public schools, and as somebody who's been in education for 20 plus years. One of the things that I said was that it's not a new thing. I just didn't know what it was called. But I, in my estimation, I would say it's been in schools for quite some time now. They just call it other things. And without getting myself into too much trouble, that's all I will say that in my experience of 20 plus years in education. It's everywhere. And unless you, as a parent, are not reading the materials that your kids are reading, you really wouldn't know, because it really is everywhere. And sometimes the stuff is just kind of shocking. So my advice as an educator, if you have kids in school, make sure you're reading their stuff. Just take a peek every now and then and see what's in their stuff, and participate in your kids' education. That's just a general thing. Participate in your kids' education. Make sure you know what's going on. It's very important. How you treat your kids' education is the same amount of importance that your kids will put on their education. You don't go to parent-teacher conferences. They won't think their education is important. That's just how it is. Kids look at what you do, not what you say. And then I had the opportunity to join the Andrew Caldwell Show, which is a radio show, and they wanted me to talk to them about the expansion of the Rooney Rule, which is the Rooney Rule is the NFL requiring minorities and women to be interviewed and hired for jobs in the NFL, like coaching jobs and stuff like that. So they wanted me to comment on that. So if you follow me on any of my social media at Money Talk Mel, on Twitter at Money Talk with Melanie, on Facebook, you'll find any of that information. In the news, let's talk about the news. The weed was, I think, officially legalized today. Yesterday was 420, which is the celebration of weed. As somebody who's never done as somebody who's never done any type of drug before or smoked any kind of weed, I think it's weird to have a whole celebration to celebrate a drug. But that's what they do on 420. But it's legalized today, and people have been talking all day long about it being legalized. And I think there are some incidents where, for medicinal purposes and things like that, it's great. I hear that people say it's a good idea. I get offended by the smell of it. Like if you go to places where it's already been legalized, like New York City, Atlantic City, or decriminalized, different, decriminalized is different. They just don't arrest you for it anymore. It just smells like marijuana everywhere. And it's bizarre. Like that part is bizarre to me. But it's recreational marijuana is legal now. And the other thing that worries me is you have people just walking around high, and you can tell that they're high. And I feel like that's a safety issue. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. That's they wonder why people like me are like, why don't you like recreational marijuana? I'd be cool with it if people just stayed in their houses and do that. But people tend not to, right? Just like when people who drink tend to stay, in their houses, or, you get an Uber and go from one place to another when you've been drinking. To me, it would seem like it's the same principle, so that there's like a safety thing, but it doesn't seem to be that way with the weed, with the cannabis, with the Mary Jane, as they call it. So those are just some of the concerns. But a lot of people are celebrating that it's it's now legal and you can smoke. But my understanding from what I read is you can only get an ounce. I don't know what that looks like as far as weed smoking is concerned. Like I don't know how much of a smoke that is. I have no idea. But in New Jersey, you can only get like an ounce, and that's it. It doesn't sound like a lot to me, but that's it. That's all you can get. So you can get in New Jersey or surrounding areas. I think you can get up to an ounce of weed recreationally for whatever it costs. I don't even know like how much it costs. And that's the other thing I wonder, like, how do you have money to blow? I wonder the same thing about smokers. Like, how do you have money to blow on that? Like, you're literally burning money. Same thing with smoking marijuana. Maybe I'm too uptight. Maybe that's, maybe I wouldn't be so high strung if I, maybe that's part of my problem, that I've never done it. I don't know what the problem is, but that is part of my issue that I have with that kind of thing. I have one more thing that I want to talk to you about before I go on break. I was reading an article earlier today that says 72% of six-figure earners are men, while 57% of workers are making under $25,000 are women, according to a survey. Now, it has a lot of information in that survey, but it gives the impression that is a display of, women being treated unfairly in the marketplace. And I'm not sure. I've always wondered about those statistics for a couple of reasons. Women are the ones who have the babies. Women are the ones who tend to, generally speaking. Now, of course, there's always outliers, but are the ones who tend to stay home. So that's going to cut off years of experience, which means that when you do go into the workplace, you're going to have less years of experience. So that means you probably are going to make less than your male counterpart that's the same age. To me, I'm just thinking, I'm just looking at the numbers. I'm just thinking about the numbers. So I just question everything. And anybody who's had a statistics class knows to question everything. When it comes to statistics, you just go, let's flesh these numbers out. And what do these numbers actually mean? Most 72% of six-figure earners are men. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But women are catching up, but it says, we're always just catching up to the men. But does that say something bad about men? That that women are disproportionately overrepresented in the low wage and part-time jobs? Does that mean that women are applying for the same jobs as men and not getting them? Not necessarily. So that's something that should be questioned, in my opinion. So just something for you to think about. Just don't immediately buy the headline, in my opinion. Think about what the statistics say and just give it some thought before you buy what the media is selling, I guess is my point. So we'll be back at the end of this break with Agile performance marketing expert Wes Azzaidani, and he's going to talk to us about how startup leaders make twice the money in half the time. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Money Talk with Melanie on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your host, Melanie Collette, and up next is our first guest, Agile performance marketing expert Wes Azzaidani. He is going to talk to us about how startup leaders make twice the money in half the time. He is recognized as the nation's leading expert on Agile performance marketing. In addition to his book, Business Barack, I hope I pronounced that correctly, An Entrepreneur's Guide to Cashing In on Creativity, he has found a unique way to use proven software as a service fundamentals to attract hungry buyers in healthcare, manufacturing, information security, telecommunications, and many more industries. Wes has used his method successfully as both an agile coach and performance marketer who has worked for Fortune 500 behemoths like Boeing, rapidly growing network diagnostic companies like Okla, tiny healthcare solopreneurship, and everything in between. He's constantly sought out by startup founders and CEOs. His information grabs business people of every background. His interview style is captivating and the interviewer audience alike. I am very excited to have him on the show. Without further ado, Wes. Hello.
Hey, Melanie.
How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for that generous introduction. Yeah, it's great to be here. Great to see you.
Great.
Hear you.
Yeah, great to talk to you this evening. Is there anything that I left out of your bio you'd like the audience to know about?
No, I think that's enough. That's enough about me. Let's talk about how we can help these folks.
It always seems like a lot when you get introduced, right? You're like, I did all that. So, first of all, I want to ask you what an agile performance marketer is before we go anywhere else.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's a rare breed, and so that's you can be the nation's leading when there aren't all that much. So it's really two things. So there's the Agile product development system, which really came out of software because back in the day, when people were doing software development, they were building software products in using the same management systems that you would use to build a building. So kind of this waterfall project management type thing. It was called waterfall. And that just didn't work because software development was just a whole different game. And so people got burnt out. Things would get buggy. For those who are maybe old enough, they might remember how things were like when Microsoft was kind of up and coming. And that there were issues with the operating system. And so, a bunch of these burnt out, deep thinking software developers came together and said, okay, this isn't working. What do we do to really make sure that the products that we're building are high quality and that we're not getting burnt out? And so they came up with something called Agile, which ultimately is based off of the lean management system, which is how Toyota has been dominating for so long and building such high quality products. And so it's this kind of agile way of doing things is kind of like becoming the norm in the software space, especially with startups. It's become a buzzword, and so with anything that's become popular, you have a lot of people who are like latching onto the title but not really practicing it at a deep level, maybe just at a tactical level, but it's still a very useful framework. And so my background as an agile coach, and I combine that background with a performance marketing skill set, which is to write ads that are held accountable to sell for people. And so combining those two disciplines, direct marketing or performance marketing and agility, you're coming up with something that can really help a lot of entrepreneurs who don't have huge budgets create great products with less resources. That's really all it is just less products, better products with less resources faster. Easier said than done, but it's for sure doable if you know the way. So that's kind of the long short of it. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense, because one of the things that you talk about in your book is basically that if you have an idea, you can go from kind of having that idea to going ahead and making that idea profitable. That a lot of people, kind of under the theory that a lot of people have these ideas but don't know how to make that idea profitable.
Yeah, exactly. And so here's the thing, just to kind of step back when we want to talk about ideas, you have to realize that if you want to grow your business, you have to do the marketing. You have to sell. You don't have a business if people aren't buying from you. You just don't. It doesn't matter what you're selling. And so when you look at marketing, what is it really? What are if you can boil it down to two components, what is it? It's two things, to quote the great Dan Kennedy. It's behavioral science or behavioral economics, behavioral psychology. You can use different terms for it, and math.
Right.
So, like I'm putting, the math part is kind of obvious. You're putting, you're spending X number of dollars on ad spend, maybe X number of dollars on developing a product, and you want to make sure that the return you're getting is more than what you're putting into it. So that's the math piece, and that could be a whole separate discussion. But the behavioral science piece is kind of what my book is what it concerns itself with. So one of the things you have to realize when creating products and you have an idea is if you want to really leverage your ideas to the maximum, you really have to understand that human beings aren't rational, right? That and that's what the science of behavioral economics concerns itself with. So, but to answer your question directly, and we can go into the behavioral economics question maybe a little bit later. But to answer your question directly, you have to figure out what creativity is and how to come up with good ideas, and it's all about speed, because anybody can come up with a good idea. I know people who are sitting at home. I know a guy who's sitting at home collecting unemployment, and he has great ideas. Like I think he said that, I think not, he said, I know that he came up with the idea that became Uber before Uber was launched. But he didn't do anything with it, so there was no implementation. So he's sitting at home taking unemployment. We don't want people who are listening to this to be in that situation. So when it comes to how to come up with good ideas fast so that you can implement them fast, it's really this idea of conceptual blending. And so I'm just going to make it really simple for the folks listening. So it's really 3 steps, this idea of conceptual blending. And this term was invented by me. I can't take credit for it. It's by a person called Arthur Koestler. I think he was around in the 60s. Anyway,
wow.
Conceptual blending is one, you take 2 or more elements that already exist but weren't previously related. Step 2, you join them together to create something that has never been witnessed before. And step 3, you make it interesting and valuable, right? And so all of those 3 steps have to be there in order for you to make money off it. You might skip a step, one of those steps, and you might like it. It might bring joy to your life, and that's fine. But we're here talking about how do you make money from ideas, and so those 3 steps you need to follow. And so I guess what are some examples of that? So bringing 2 unrelated concepts. Well, what happens if you get the concept of renting apartments? So that's concept 1, renting apartments, plus the concept of hotels. You get Airbnb. Exactly.
Got it.
Or you could grocery shopping with one concept, plus Amazon for how Amazon does its fulfillment systems, and you get Instacart. And you can even, it's not just in these big brand names, even something like in fiction, if the product that people are selling is more on the entertainment side. So the Song of Ice and Fire series, which I'm a fan of, and the show Game of Thrones is based off of it. By the way, the ending was horrible, but
I heard that.
That's because
I'm probably like one of the few people who's never watched one episode of Game of Thrones. One of the few people. Don't hate me for that, listeners, but I've never, I don't know, no interest. I don't know, it just looked weird to me. But I know a lot of people who watched it and loved it and thought the ending was horrible also.
yeah. Just different strokes for different folks, Melanie, so it's all good. But anyway, so even with the Song of Ice and Fire series, George R.R. Martin, he's pretty open. It's not like it's a secret. He combined historical medieval fiction, so like you have historical fiction novels like the Saxon series, combining that with the Lord of the Rings, because he was a big Lord of the Rings fan, and a little bit of Conan the Barbarian. So he took these like three major elements, and there's more, but it was really these three: historical fiction, Conan the Barbarian, Lord of the Rings, and he came up with what we now know as Game of Thrones, and it was a hit. So it's really, that's how you come up with great new ideas. You can't invent anything. That's the thing that people need to realize. There's nothing to invent. There's nothing really new. The only way to come up with something quote-unquote new is to combine two unrelated ideas, which is why this concept of conceptual blending is so powerful.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah. So then when you have that idea, obviously it came up in your mind, it may or may not work, and that's why it's important to test it. So I think a lot of people, they get really excited with their ideas. And so, for example, Ford, back in the day, they had a high-ticket vehicle and a cheaper vehicle. I don't recall their names, but they were thinking, hey, we have this great idea for a mid-market car, because we're having a lot of the rich people are buying our high-ticket vehicles, and a lot of the not-so-rich people, more humble people, are buying our cheaper cars. But we need something mid-market to really go after that middle class.
Right.
And so they got excited about it. They designed the car. They built it. This car became the Ford Edsel, and it bombed. It was so bad, nobody bought it. Like, I don't know how many millions Ford lost, but it was horrible. But why? I mean, they had a creative idea. They had a problem that they thought they wanted to solve. But here's the thing. The market wasn't there. Folks weren't interested. The Ford customers weren't interested in buying a car like that. They'd say, either I'd buy a non-Ford car, or if I wanted to buy a Ford car that was mid-market, and I had a cheaper Ford car, I'm just going to save up until I can buy the most expensive Ford car. But this mid-market thing, people weren't interested in. So that's the thing. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, like one of the reasons most startups fail, is they have an idea, they fall in love with an idea, and then they just go guns-ho blazing, putting everything that they have into it without testing it out. So you have to test it out. So it's not enough to do conceptual blending. There also has to be some sort of testing process. And that's where like the Agile methodology and the Lean methodology really come into play. So if you don't have that under your belt, you need to get it or something. Otherwise, you're just going to be dead in the water.
Okay, that makes sense. And so you should know, or probably consult with someone like you, what those testing methods are. What are some of the testing methods that you could possibly use? If you have an idea and you've put it together, what are some testing methods that you could possibly use?
Sure. And yeah, there's no need to consult with somebody like me, because I'm super expensive, and if you're starting off, I want you to save some money. So I'll just tell you. I'll just give you like the quick down low. So what you need to do is first, you have this idea, but first you want to talk to customers, not necessarily to tell them, hey, do you think this is a good idea? Because one of the principles about behavioral science, people oftentimes lie. They lie to you. They even lie to themselves. People don't know what they want. But what they do know is what they hate. So as much as possible, get to know your customers, the solutions that the things that the products that they're using that your idea might do a better job at, and just see what's their current problem space and what are their pain points, what are the things that they hate about the current products that they're using. And then that'll give you a good idea of like, hey, this is my product idea, I need to add some features and benefits to it that address those pain points directly. And so once you have that deep customer knowledge, particularly regarding the problem space, that's when you can start creating a prototype. So don't just create a whole bunch of, don't launch, a whole thing. Don't bet your mortgage on anything yet. just create a prototype and have people interact with it and see how they engage with the product. Don't just ask their opinions about it. See how they engage it. So if you're building a website that's selling a certain type of software, you could track what they're doing on the website. Like, we notice a lot of people are spending time on this particular feature page, but not so much on this. And so that gives you an idea of how to do it. Another sneaky way, and this is really sneaky. So I don't know. Should I share this, Melanie?
I think that you should.
All right. And this is something that a lot of these old school direct response, direct mail copywriters used to do, and it worked. Is right before you create anything of the product. Obviously, you need to have your knowledge. You need to have your research down, your customer knowledge down, pain points, a general idea of the product you want to do, and then write an ad for it. So write a sales letter for it or a sales page, before creating the product. Just write the sales page, talk about its features. So it's got this, it's got this, it's got this, even though that doesn't have any of it, and then see how people react to that. And then say, okay, and we have a wait list or something like that, and see how people react to it. Or you could even sell it like pre-orders, and whatever in that sales page you're able to deliver on, keep it. And if you feel like, I wrote these things in the sales page, but I know I'm not able to deliver on them, then just take that out because you want to make sure that you fulfill on your promise. You don't want to rip people off. So that's a sneaky way that has been that people have used to test out ideas, because there's no better validation for a test than when a customer gives you money for it.
Right.
Even if it's just $1. Even if it's just $1. That's
because
all you
that shows that they actually value it. They put their money where their mouth is.
Exactly.
They plunk down the finances. So that shows that they really wanted it and they saw the value behind it. As opposed to a survey, and you're right, people really do lie in surveys. And when it comes to polling, too. That's why polling is tough. Polling, surveys, all of that stuff is really hard.
No, it is. And, there's from idea of lying on polling, regardless of what your political leanings are, it's a good case study. So, during the elections, when Donald Trump was involved, people were being polled, and this idea of the dad, of the secret Trump, of the dad who's a secret Trump supporter. And so they'd get polled, but sometimes mom is there, maybe the kids are there, and they might not be Trump supporters. So the dad will just give the answer that would make them happy. But when he actually goes into the voting booth,
right,
and the curtains are closed, his vote is going to be very different.
And I think with the political climate being what it is, I think there was a lot of that the last election. Exactly. People just not telling the truth.
And so that's one thing. So like you said, people lie to others, but they also, I don't want to say they lie to themselves, but sometimes they're not aware. Sometimes somebody doesn't know that they want something until they see it in front of their face, right? Until you go and you offer it to them. Then you'll be like, I didn't know I needed this before. But in order for that to work, you need to know, like I said, you need to know that customer persona. You need to know what they love, what they hate, the things that they've been using before that maybe they're not satisfied with. So you need to know that in order to hit that bullseye.
That explains the entire aisle while you're on your way to the register at certain discount stores. Just the entire aisle is just stuff that I didn't know I needed. Started out with one item, and then by the time I got to the register, I had 5 items. What happened? I don't understand what happened. Why? What? Why do I have 5 more items? We're up against the commercial break. We are speaking with Wes Azzaidani. Am I saying that right? Azzaidani.
Yes,
Okay, Wes Azzaidani, he is an Agile performance marketing expert, and we're talking about how startup leaders make twice the money in half the time. Very interesting marketing tips going on. We'll be back on the other side of the break.
This is important because it's your money. Your money. Money Talk with Melanie. Money Talk with Melanie on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. Our guest this hour is Wes. I want to work on your name because I want to perfect it. Wes Azzaidani, and he is talking to us about how startup leaders make twice the money in half the time, and giving us fabulous insights into agile marketing, which I had no idea about. I'd like to have guests on the show to talk about things that I've never heard of and that I have no idea about, because I assume that a lot of my audience is in the same boat as I am, because I'm in the biz and I'm like, I'm not real familiar with agile performance marketing. Let's talk about it. So here we are talking about and it seems very important if you are a startup or thinking about starting a business. Wes is giving us some very valuable tips as far as how to get started and how to get started successfully, I think is the theme here. And is that what's, tell me about the book and how the book helps in this regard.
Yeah, so the book essentially distills decades and decades of research on behavioral psychology, behavioral economics, combined with case study after case study after case study that shows how entrepreneurs who don't have the endless budget of huge companies like Coca-Cola or Disney or Apple, how they can be successful, how they can really create profitable businesses without having to kill themselves just by hacking their own minds and their own psychology to come up with great ideas, but also hacking in an ethical way the minds of their prospects and their customers to add value and charge accordingly high prices.
That makes sense. And because people who are usually just Coca-Cola, I would imagine at this point has a huge, R&D department that they use to test things out and do research and things like that. Whereas if you are just starting out or thinking about starting a company or think you have a great idea, then you don't have access to an R&D department or have the kind of capital where you could invest in one. So I think that's really important.
Exactly. And here's the thing. I mean, and I was very deliberate about how I use the case studies in the book. Yes, I mentioned things like Disney, Apple, and Toyota. I mentioned specific things that are applicable regardless of what size your business is, even if it's just solopreneurship. These ideas I've implemented myself, both for my own business and also for clients across different industries and different sizes. So, and I mentioned those case studies again of different entrepreneurs who I've worked with who've used it. So, but to get to this idea of the Coca-Cola, I think a lot of folks who are starting off feel like, well, Coke is doing this, Apple is doing, Coke is doing an advertising campaign, let's say. So I should do the same thing. I should do the same type of marketing that Coke is doing. And that is a big, fat mistake. Mistake.
No, you are not Coca-Cola, boo-boo. You cannot do the same.
Yeah. No, boo, you can't do the cocoa.
No, you cannot.
Because here's the thing, it's not just that they have more money. They operate according to an entire different set of parameters. So, yes, they have like billions of dollars of investor money, but also there are different things that they're looking at. When Coke does an ad, they're not, when an entrepreneur, like the folks who I imagine are listening to this show, when they create an ad, they're creating an ad for one thing only, which is sales. I need sales coming in. I put in $5,000 for this ad, whether it's in print or online, and I want to see a 2x, 3x return, right? And if not, then the ad isn't successful. It's just not. But when Coke does it, it's a slightly different thing. They are thinking of what's Wall Street going to think. They're thinking of what are the board of directors going to thinking.
True.
They're thinking of what's the media going to say.
Yep.
Local governments. Governments. We want some prestige, so we want the ad to win an award at the Clios. And so that's why a lot of people who are more in brand advertising, sales isn't really, making sales for the client isn't really the top priority. It's really about winning the awards. That's the incentivization structure that a lot of these big ad agencies have, unless they're like direct response, in which case, no, they're accountable for making sales. But, you know, the whole branding thing of like, yeah, we're going to show a commercial that costs $1 million to make and run of a polar bear drinking some brown liquid from a bottle, and somehow that's going to convince people that Coke is better than, you know, Zevia or whatever. That's just not the situation that you're in. So if you're listening to this, please don't do that. Like, make sure that your advertising is focused on having people respond directly, sales.
Right. I think people, you know, Coca-Cola is more of a, we already know they're there. We're just reminding you we're around, and look at this cool bear.
Yeah.
And look at this cool animation. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it's definitely not a, people who drink Coca-Cola they've already decided that that's what they drink. Like that's, you know, so yeah, for sure. So even if you're not a product development expert, you can come up with ideas that's the next like mega hit product. Now does that have to do with the 3 steps that you talked about earlier, or is there more that you can add to your vision?
Those steps have to be there, but you know, if you want to stack, it's all about stacking the advantages, right? It's all about stacking the advantages. So the more advantages that you can stack in your favor, the better. And so that's why I wrote the book the way I did. I just didn't. Nobody has time to read fluff, so that's why I made it as short and sweet as possible.
That is very true. That is very true, especially when it comes to books like this. You kind of really just want the quick and dirty. Like, what do I do? Just tell me what I do.
Exactly, yeah. And, you know, and the reason I made it a book was because people who, you know, readers are leaders, as they say.
Right.
And so, you know, those are the type of people who would most benefit from it. And me, I'm not a good dancer, so TikTok videos, it's not, I can't do that. Anyway, so... So there's the conceptual blending piece, but also you have to keep in mind, like, and so there's the conceptual blending, and there's the testing that we talked about, but it's also the staffing. Staffing is really, really important, who you want to hire. And Melanie, I will tell you, I have been in the software development industry, in the tech space for so long, that a lot of managers, they make the fatal mistake of just like, hey, we have a budget, we want to cheap out, so what we're going to do is we're going to hire a team in India to develop our product for us. Now, there's nothing wrong. Now, let me just put it this way. I'm not saying this as someone who's anti-Indian or anything like that. A lot of them are great developers. But it's hard to do the kind of conceptual blending work that I'm talking about with people who are like an ocean and a continent away, if that makes sense.
It does. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, and also, like, because such a low price point, a lot of times the quality isn't there. So you really have to ensure that you invest in your people. But then you could be like, well, okay, well, how do I know who to hire? You know, how do I know who to hire? And so that's where I think a great case study, and this is from Disney, but you know, and the only reason I mention this is because everybody knows this. So, you know, I'm sure you know the cartoon animated film Beauty and the Beast from the 90s.
Of course, sure.
Yeah, it's my favorite. I think it's one of my favorite movies. And so, if you notice, the Beast was drawn in a very interesting and unique way, and it's instantly recognizable now. And the guy who drew it was an animator by the name of Glenn Keane. And Glenn Keane is an interesting guy. He actually did not want to be an animator. He you know, this was back in the 70s or something. He sent his application to CalArts, which is like an art academy in California, California Academy of Arts. And he sent it because I think he wanted to be like a painter or a sculptor or something. He wanted to do something within the fine arts. His application was mixed up, and I accidentally sent it to the animation department. So he got accepted.
To the animation department.
To the animation department. And he's like, well, okay, I'm sure, I guess I'll do it. And he did, to the benefit of everybody who loved this Disney animation. And so he went through there, and by the way, Glenn Keane, he's the guy who animated Ariel in The Little Mermaid. He animated the Aladdin character. He animated Pocahontas. He animated Tarzan. But he also animated the Beast. And so when he went in there, he was mentored by 3 of Disney's 9. These are like the original guys who like drew Snow White, who made Snow White and Pinocchio. And so that's one of the that leads to like the first thing of creating a profitable team is you want to socialize shared learning within the organization. What I mean is that, you know, especially with something very technical, and software development is very technical, animation is very technical, you want to document your best practices, and that's very important. But you also have to remember that these documents evolve with time as the organization continues to learn, which is why it's very important to have mentorship, so that you have people who have a lot of knowledge, and that you have a process in place where that knowledge is always being shared, like an apprenticeship type situation. You have to encourage that, and I think a lot of times business people are uncomfortable doing that because, you know, well, you might have people working for you who are a little bit more senior, and you hire some more junior people, and those senior people might not want to mentor those more junior people because they think, well, I don't want to give away everything that I know, because then, you know, what if they become competition?
Right.
And that is toxic thinking that you have to like nip in the bud ASAP, because you know, really it's about the knowledge, and the companies that learn the fastest are the ones that win. That's a cold, hard principle that you can't escape from.
But how do you do that? How do you eliminate that thought, like by ignoring kind of the fact that sometimes that's the case? Like sometimes people do want your job. Know what I mean?
Well, yes. Well, sometimes it's too. But like if you're the business owner, you know, if you're starting the business, it's your business.
Right, and you can decide who gets what job, and hopefully you just don't allow those kind of shenanigans.
Right. Yeah. But let's say you have like staff, and you have some more senior people who have that fear, like, hey, I don't want this more junior person to take my job, and you have to incentivize them, reward them, make it part of their performance review. You know, when you see them mentoring the more junior folks, and you're starting to see results. Like reward, like bonus, like give them some sort of carrot that makes them want to do it. And really, honestly speaking, when people work in a psychologically safe work environment, Melanie, they want to help. They want to share their knowledge. You know, it makes them feel good to be known as the expert.
Oh my gosh, I don't think I've heard that phrase in ever. A psychologically safe work environment.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What is? What is? Wait a minute. There are places where people consider your psychological safety?
Yes, there are, and you know, I mean, they're not as common as we'd want them to be. But you know, Toyota is a great example, and a lot of the people who implement Lean at a really deep level, that's a huge priority for them, and it has to happen because, you know, business is all about problem solving. If you're a startup founder, the reason you're going into business in the first place, I hope, is because you're trying to solve a problem for people. Otherwise, they're not going to want to buy, and you're not going to have a business. So business is all about problem solving. And so, but you can't, but in order to solve problems, you have to make problems visible, right? And you can't make problems visible if people are scared to call them out. Because how many people do you know? I'm sure everybody here has had a boss at one point in their life who, if you came to them and said, "Hey, boss, you know, I noticed that this thing isn't really working out. This process is kind of broken. These customers aren't happy." You share that feedback so that you could work with your boss to solve that problem, and he just doesn't want to hear it. Sometimes you have bosses who will be like, "I only want to hear good news."
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
And those are toxic work environments. And if you're an employee there, I suggest you find someplace better. And if you are the boss, then you know, you are putting your business at risk with that kind of attitude. And so you need to change it.
So you're saying that being a good leader means to be open to not criticism. That's not the word. Feedback, maybe.
Well, yeah, and the feedback, and it's just like, you know, as a leader, you know, you have to, you know, in Lean we have this idea of like problems are treasures. Like for me, if I'm a lean leader, if I'm working with a team, I want them to show me problems. Like I'd get anxious if there weren't problems, because there's always problems, right? Because
you would think. I'm just thinking to myself, like, you would think you would want to know where the problems are. You wouldn't want to be walking through your job as a leader and there be problems going on that you're just blindly not knowing about. Why would you want that?
Yeah, it's really an ego thing, because one of the things is, like, it's kind of interesting, and it goes back to the psychology of it all. You know, I think a lot of business people, they go into business because they have a passion to, they see a wrong that they want to right on the world. But they also obviously want to make money by doing that. And there's a certain prestige that comes with being a startup founder. Like, I'm a startup founder, you know, and then that way you could hobnob with VCs and feel important and feel like you're on the set of Shark Tank and have Mark Cuban, you know. So people want that, and so I feel like when they, you know, if you don't check yourself, you go in there and you be like, yes, I'm getting investor money, things are moving, and I see a bunch of red flags, but if I address them, my perception of myself is going to self-destruct. That, like, oh, I don't really know everything, and I have more learning to do.
So just because you don't perceive yourself as a whole jerk doesn't mean you're not.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And you know, and customers will vote. Like, you know, I mean, if you're a jerk, if your employees aren't psychologically safe with you, if you know, then you're not going to be able to solve problems. Or if you do, it's going to be in a very expensive, wasteful way. And that's going to affect the quality, that's going to affect the delivery, and ultimately your customers are just going to want to shop elsewhere.
And I do truly believe that when it comes to teams and bosses and leaderships, that your underlings definitely have multiple ways of messing you over with your company. Just so many ways. So, like, why would you not be a good person? Why would you not be a nice boss? Like, why would you not a pushover, but why would you not be open and be cooperative and you know, and discuss things and talk things? Like, why would you not be that kind of supervisor or manager or boss? Why would you not do that? It's only, in the long run, it's only going to benefit you. So why would you not be that way?
1,000,000%. And just to get, like, if people want an example of good, I would suggest, you know, I know there's shows like Shark Tank, and you know, The Apprentice was popular for a while. And I'm going to be honest, The Apprentice, we just talked about Donald Trump a few minutes ago. The Apprentice, it's a very fun show to watch, right? But I would not watch it for business lessons, because if you look at the whole point of the show is watching a bunch of, like, young people in suits, or celebrities, depending on what season it is, try to kiss Donald Trump's Azzaidani.
Right?
And you don't. That doesn't teach you much. If you wanna watch a show that kind of teaches you a little bit more about how some of these dynamics work, like shows like Shark Tank.
Yes, it's definitely better. I show that to my financial lit kids, Shark Tank, especially if there's like a kid entrepreneur on.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, you know. So that's the thing. So for sure, like, the psychological safety has to be there, and the mentorship has to be there. So that's number one. The second thing is you want to create, and like I said, you want to you have to hire the right people, right? So you have systems in place, you have processes in place, you have mentorship in place, but you have to hire the right people. And here's the thing: it's not about how qualified they are. It's not about their degrees or anything like that. So back to the Glenn Keane example. You know, it's not like him creating the Beast character, the design of it just came out one night. It took a lot of work. But guess what? He used conceptual blending, by the way. So he looked and he's like, okay, he started researching old story books that talked about the Beauty and the Beast story. And he thought, oh, well, you know, the Beast is drawn as a guy in a suit with a boar's head. And so he tried that out, but it didn't really hit. So he kept going through multiple iterations. So back to the conceptual blending, he bought a buffalo head at a taxidermy shop and posted it in the wall of his office.
That makes I see exactly where you're going. It makes so much sense.
Yeah, he went to the zoo and he studied and sketched wolves and gorillas. So, like, the Beast has the brow of a gorilla. And he went just through iteration after iteration after iteration. And so like this idea of suck early and suck often. And a lot of his early work sucks in terms of the beast. Yeah.
I know that feeling. Unfortunately, we're up against the close of the hour. I totally get exactly what you're saying. Tell people where they can get your book, where they can follow you on social media, that kind of thing.
Sure. So the book sells in bookstores, online, and elsewhere for around $30 as a paperback. But if you go to my website, you can get a PDF copy for the low price of free.
Oh, nice.
And yeah. And so you can. My website is powerpersuasion.net. Powerpersuasion.net. And all you got to do is just put in your precious email and phone number, and that's it. You'll get the book in your inbox.
Okay, very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Get the book for free at powerpersuasion.net. Very good.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you so much for visiting us here at Money Talk with Melanie. I appreciate it.
The pleasure's all mine, Melanie. Have a great day.
Yep, you too. Have a good one.
Money Talk with Melanie features entrepreneurs, CEOs, and politicos who are experts in their fields. Money Talk with Melanie. Money Talk with Melanie on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your host, Melanie Collette. And if you missed our first hour, we had Agile performance marketing expert Wes Azzaidani, and he talked to us about how startup leaders can make twice the money in half the time. Really gave out some great Agile marketing tips. I had never heard of Agile marketing before, rookie me. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have him on the show to explain what Agile performance marketing was. And if you are thinking about starting a business, he really did a good job explaining how you can come up with a good idea, how you can even just come up with a good idea. If you want to create a product, he explained the process in creating a product and marketing that product. Pretty good stuff. So if you missed that first hour, you can look for the podcast, which will be posted on 98.7 The Coast's website, or any place where you follow me on social media at Money Talk Mel on Twitter, or at Money Talk with Melanie on Facebook. You'll be able to find the podcast, or any place where you download your podcast: Apple Podcasts, Blueberry, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Any of those places where you get your podcasts, you can get Money Talk with Melanie and catch up with the first hour of the show. Our second hour guest is Stephen J. Spence, and he's going to talk to us about the truth of our monetary system. Very excited to have him on the guest as a money geek that I am, but really it ties in with a lot of what I say about the show Money Talk with Melanie, about global and kitchen table economics, and how it ties in with our politics and how we vote. No matter how you vote, know what you're voting for. And one of the things that's very important, at least in my not so humble opinion, is to understand how our monetary system works. And it's not really a secret. It's just that a lot of us don't really know, and people are not really super forthcoming with that information. So I would suggest that most people, as a part of Joe Q public, don't necessarily understand how our monetary system works. For example, people are usually shocked when I say, "Do you know that the Fed is privately owned?" And they're like, "What? What do you mean the Fed is privately owned?" Like, it's not a government entity; it's privately owned. And I'm sure that's one of the things that Stephen Spence is going to talk to us about. So we'll have him on in a couple of minutes. In the meantime, I wanted to talk about a couple of things that I thought were really interesting. I found an article. It was a young woman. I love the Business Insider, even though sometimes they can be a little bit slanted with their articles. But I found a good article that had talked about negotiating everything. The title of the article said, "I've negotiated everything from speaking fees to the cost of a blender, and I swear by 5 rules to get great deals." Now, I always, speaking fees, obviously, yeah, you would negotiate that. But I was like, really, the cost of a blender? You negotiate everything? So I read the article, and I thought I had some really good tips that I thought I'd share with you before I call Stephen Spence. One of the things, obvious, do your research, right? Anytime you're going to purchase something or you're going to make any kind of business deal, you're going to do your research. So you're going to look at what their pricing is like as it pertains to, in context of other companies' prices. So and it's easy to do. Now with the interwebs, it's super easy to do. You can check prices. Even when I'm in a store and I see something, I always jump on the internet and check for the item and see if it's significantly cheaper somewhere else. That's just always a good idea, in my opinion. So you want to check their competitors' pricing. You want to see if there's promotions or sales, kind of check the time of year it is. If a big sale just came up that you just missed, you might be able to bring that up in a negotiation. And sometimes the managers will let you have the sale. And I was like, when I read that, I was like, that's probably true. When I worked retail many moons ago as a child in undergrad, I remember people doing that. And that's not something, usually it's people who are not originally from this country. Like, I feel like it's people from other countries that do that as a habit, but Americans don't tend to do that as much. But I was like, and I remember thinking, why are they trying to negotiate? The price is what it is. But apparently it's big in other cultures, and it's probably a good idea. Look and see if there's any offer coupons, particularly online. If you're going to buy something online, look up the coupon code. There might be a coupon code somewhere. So that's always a good idea as well. When you're negotiating, avoid yes or no questions. Also a good idea. So don't ask if you can give me a discount. Ask, tell me what we can do to lower the price of this item. Very clever, right? It's all in what you say. And of course, be willing to leave that item right there. Anybody who's heard of the famous book, The Art of the Deal, by President 45, knows that you always have to be willing to walk away from a deal. So I thought that was excellent advice. They were excellent tips. Negotiating anything from a blender to a speaker's fee, why not? So in our second hour, we're going to bring up Stephen J. Spence. He's going to talk to us about the truth behind our monetary system. We'll be back in a few minutes.
This is important because it's your money. Your money. Money Talk with Melanie. Money Talk with Melanie. On 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your host, Melanie Collette, and our guest for the second hour is Stephen J. Spence. He is a retired Air Force veteran, airline mechanic, and aircraft builder, and owner of a real estate rental investment company. Throughout his military and airline careers, he taught airline safety to groups around the world. Spence grew up in poverty with a single mom who immigrated from Germany with her American military husband, only to find herself alone with two young sons in the wake of a divorce. With no role models, he had no understanding of how to build his financial future. Now, a successful entrepreneur, Spence focuses on financial literacy as it relates to the ordinary person. He and his wife, Azzaidani, have two daughters, Shannon and Rachel, a son, Lucas, and one grandson, Julian. And I'm very excited to have Stephen J. Spence on Money Talk with Melanie this evening. How are you this evening?
I'm great. How are you, Melanie? Thanks for the intro.
Oh, thank you. I'm very excited to have you on the show because I can only tell tidbits. I teach economics and financial literacy in a public school, and a lot of what you have in your book is not in the general curriculum. So,
well, I'm in my 50s, and I'm just finding this stuff out, you know. Right.
And this is the kind of you have to do research because it's not really the people in power are not forthcoming with this.
Well, they won't be in power if they were. That's how it works out.
There you go. You're absolutely right. So is there anything in your bio that I didn't mention that you'd like to tell the audience about?
No, I think that sums it up pretty much. The thing is we all start from a different point, and it doesn't matter where you start; it's how you end up, and it's up to you through education how you're gonna, where you're gonna end up. So, I want to help people get to where they need to be. We struggled. I struggled in the Air Force. In the Air Force, you didn't get much money, so yeah. I do want to say, it's like what started this was probably a question I had about in the 80s when we were testing in the Air Force. You had to study budget processes of the U.S. government, and part of it was Treasury and the Federal Reserve, and there was no internet then to do research, and I didn't understand. Mind you, I was in my early 20s. I didn't understand why the Treasury had to get money from the Federal Reserve. If it's like if you're wearing the same pants in the same pocket, and I just had that question forever until like maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I started looking into this, and I heard you mention this earlier about the Federal Reserve. You made me think about that. Is that it wasn't federal in the first place? They're a whole different pair of pants. So.
Certainly, that's absolutely right. The name is super misleading.
Yep. That sure is.
And it's in your book, but we're getting ahead of ourselves, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that was my fault because I brought up the Federal Reserve, but I was like, fun fact. That's just one, like, fun fact because I think people hear about the Federal Reserve all the time, right? And they just assume that it's a federal entity, which why wouldn't you assume that?
Exactly. And nobody goes out of their way to teach you this.
No. That's exactly right. So I thought that, Money, Plain and Simple is the title of the book, and it's just, it really is. Like sometimes you get a book and it's Money, Plain and Simple, and it's not really plain and simple.
Well,
but your book really is.
Yeah, when I taught aircraft mechanics maintenance on certain, I did wide body 747s and stuff like that. But you really have, for me, I really have to break it down to understand it. And then when I started teaching, I was like, these people are just like me. They're just saying yes, and but they're not really understanding it. So I think you become better when you really truly understand something instead of just knowing or reciting something. So when you understand it, you can explain it to that level. Then you got something to build on, and that's the whole point of this book.
That is very true, and you can tell that it's the point of the book. And one of the things that I love about the book, now I got the electronic version, so I don't know how it plays out in the like paperback version. But I love the questions that are highlighted because, I don't know. Me being an educator, I just love questions. So
yeah. No,
it could be an educator thing.
Well, that's how you learn, right? You ask yourself a question and you seek the answer.
Right. So that's exactly right. So I thought that was also a really good thing so that you can, as you're going through the book, really understand whether or not you're learning the concepts. Whether you're getting the takeaways,
right? The
thing that you're supposed to take away from that chapter or that section of the book. I thought that was just a very good part of the book. Thing that you should be learning.
What I would say is for anyone that doesn't know this and does get the book, they usually don't give. I say pay it forward, to give it to somebody else because it is a short read. It's like a crash course and be able to understand what's going on and then build on that. Right? That's kind of like your foundation. But the people I talk to, they're like, I'll buy you another book. You're not getting my book because I got notes in here.
Right? Exactly. So the first chapter of the book is just a quick and dirty about money, just plain old quick and dirty about money. And what I observed after that is you go into gold and silver as money, which is in the news a lot. There's a lot of advertising for gold and silver as money. With what happened in Canada a couple of months ago with the Prime Minister shutting down people's bank accounts, gold and silver as money has come up a lot more, like whether or not, you should have that as a backup if the government's going to freeze your account because they don't like what you're doing politically. Like, that's kind of crazy. So I thought that was and the fact that, it used to be that gold at least represented the dollar and it no longer does. So it's important to understand what gives the dollar value and what doesn't, now that it's not represented by gold.
Well, that's when we got taken off the gold standard in '71, that was the discovery of the money tree for our Congress. And I think I talk about good stewardship, and I think the system that they got into with the petrodollar, I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but they found this unlimited cash printing machine, and that's a down and dirty way of saying it. But yeah, so when you look at how much money has been printed, especially since the pandemic came out, I think we're over 40% of all U.S. dollars was created in the last couple of years. It's insane. And
it's now stop for a second. Somebody might listen to that and say, okay, well, why is that problematic? I need you to explain why that's problematic.
I have a really good example in the book, and what it is so there's different kinds of inflation, but I try to keep it simple.
Right.
But it creates inflation, and it does that by saying if there was only X amount of, let's say $10 in the whole world, and everybody used these $10, and you had one of those dollars, and then I just printed another $10 and just injected it into that same economy. How much is your dollar worth now?
Exactly.
Because before it was worth $1 in a $10 economy. Now it's a $20 economy. It's worth 50 cents. So it's when you break it down simply like that, the more money you throw into the economy, the less your money is worth. So people, and this is like gold and silver too, going back to that thing, is people look at gold and silver as a bad investment because it really doesn't move, it doesn't do anything, but it's really the standard. And the price of the gold or silver doesn't, when it goes up, it's not the gold and silver value going up, it never changed. It's
right.
The actual dollar that's going down, and it takes more of them to purchase. And same thing with products. So, when you go to buy a can of spaghetti sauce or a bag of diapers, or that stuff goes up. It's not going up. It's the same thing, but it's the value of the dollar that's going down, and you need more of them. Exactly.
That's exactly it. And so you hear people kind of explain it if you watch, shows about the economy and things like that, but they don't explain the details behind it. You have to kind of already come with a little bit of knowledge. So I don't think that people, when they hear it on the news, completely understand that. You know what I mean?
Well,
completely get what's being said.
You know what's funny is the other night my wife and I were watching Megyn Kelly. She was doing a podcast with Peter Schiff. Do you know him?
Sure. Yeah, I've had him on the show.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
He's a rock star, right? And
years ago, actually.
That's very cool. So he was going fast, and he's the guy you need to listen to after me. So, he's one of the guys. But she started slowing him down. It's like, wait a second. And I've been watching Megyn Kelly for a long time. She's a super, super smart woman. But when it came to the economy or just finances, this is the way I was. It was like the old Charlie Brown show where you heard the teachers like, womp, 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 womp.
Right, like, what did you say again? Stop.
Exactly.
Gonna need you to repeat that.
My wife looks at me, she says, she needs your book.
That's true. And it can be complicated, and when it's information that you already know, you can have a tendency to talk over a person said. I think that's where being a radio host and an educator kind of comes in handy. They meet each other, because when I hear something, I can take a person back and say, you're going to need to explain it.
That. And my publisher, when she picked up the book, she said, what's different about your book is you're down at the bottom with all of us, and you're taking us up the mountain. But all these people that, like the Peter Schiffs, and nothing against them, I mean, that's how you become after you get so good. But you're on the top of the mountain, and everybody's looking up there. It's like, I can't hear you. You're not speaking my language anymore. So she says, you're down. You're helping us up the journey, up the side of the mountain, to get there where we all need to be.
Okay. Now we started off by talking about the Federal Reserve. Can Do you mind if I read the first 2 lines of Chapter 3 because it's hilarious to me?
Oh, of course not.
Okay, so so Chapter 3 is about the Federal Reserve, right? It's entitled "The Federal Reserve Bank and Central Banks of the World," and the first two lines say, "These guys, pure geniuses they are. They have mastered the art of deception." Okay, I'm gonna have to read 2 more. Okay, enough of my satire. Did you know that the Federal Reserve is neither federal nor is it a reserve? I cracked up when I read that because I was like, yeah, that is absolutely true, and most people don't know that.
But, and the more important part is why do you need to know that? And that's the important part, because it is a big scam. It's what it boils down to.
It's a scam.
I call it debt slavery. That's what we're in a debt-based system, and debt is slavery. And to lack of better words, is we all are debt slaves to these people, and they created this system, and it's blowing up right in front of our eyes. That's the crazy part right now.
You are so right about that, and I think I had a guest on, can't remember which one, who was talking about this very thing and how super shady the Fed is, and what a big scam debt is.
Well, it's not just the Fed though. It's all the central banks. It's a worldwide system, and I kept and I think I wrote this in the book in the beginning. It's like I started peeling the onion layers, and it just got stinkier, and my eyes started watering. I was like, I don't want to know this stuff, but you can't unknow it. So
that's true.
It's really bad.
You can't, and once you figure out that you're just kind of like a pawn, and the bigger people's game, the elites' game, it kind of, I don't want to say it kind of makes you upset. It really does make you upset.
Yeah.
Like you're like, what is going on here? It's crazy. So it really is, and they intentionally keep this information from the people at large. But it is very important, not only for your own personal, the way you run your finances to know these things, but also, in my opinion, when you are paying attention to public policy, you need to know what's going on if you're going to involve yourself in that. If you're going to choose not to involve yourself in that, at least you're making an informed choice about that.
Yeah, that's right. Right now, the obvious thing that everybody's seeing is inflation, right? And they're selling it as inflation, and they're blaming the what do you say, the Putin price hike or whatever.
Sure.
But yeah, this has been going on for well over 6 months. The noticeable part of inflation, but if you really study how much money, like I said earlier, how much money that was created and released into the economy. You have to expect inflation, so you start preparing for it. I kind of I want to say this not offend anybody, but right now the uninformed are planning their vacations this summer, and the informed are planning for the storm.
For the recession.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's coming. It might be even depression. When we get to the depression, I mean, some of these experts are really calling some really bad times, but it doesn't look like it right now. But yet the shelves are starting to get bare. And that's the other parts of inflation is the demand. What's it called? Demand push and supply pull, or something like that. So when you have all these other things, it's like the perfect storm, and it's against the American people, and it's. And then when we get into the recession, I like to tell the joke, do you know the difference between a recession and a depression?
What's the difference?
So a recession is when your neighbor loses his job or her job. The depression is when you lose.
That makes a lot of sense. But it's true. And a lot of people, I think, are just kind of humming along with whatever it is they're doing, and not really paying attention to the kind of situation that we're in. And that food, that there's going to be food shortages, like I believe President Biden just kind of mentioned it last week sometime, and nobody took it seriously. Nobody. No. He's like, there will be food shortages. And I'm like, we're in America, and the last time there were food shortages, that was during the Depression. That's not okay. We're not okay.
But it's not possible. I do a lot of blogging to make up for since I wrote the book. I blog a lot now, lately I've been laying out a case that we're in an economic war with Russia already, and what Putin is doing and what he's been planning on doing. And I do mention in the book about sovereign nations that have to use the dollar because of the world reserve currency. And so now there's this gold repatriation to nations, and they all know what's coming. We're just not being told, so we're not paying attention. And so when these countries are repatriating their gold to their nations, especially Russia and China, I mean, these guys have been purchasing gold like mad for the last 5-6 years. They're stockpiling. They don't have more than the United States, but they're getting enough to back their money with gold, and that's what they're starting to do. And with guess what? Natural gas and oil, and so when you understand the petrodollar, now you understand the importance of what they're doing to the dollar. And
yes.
And so all these things that we get from these government programs that we get, the elderly are relying on Social Security. There's disability, and just all, Medicaid, Medicare, all this stuff has a good chance of not. We can't print money if we don't have the world reserve currency. That's the way I see it.
Okay, so now stop and explain the world reserve currency.
So the world reserve currency was formed in Bretton Woods. I want to say, if I recall, 1944. Is that right? And all these nations have agreed to use the U.S. dollar because it was backed by gold then as a currency that all their currencies would be tied to. So the United States would hold the gold, and everybody else would couple their money to our money. It was money back then. Now it's currency, right?
Right.
So when we got taken off the gold standard in 1971 and went to the petrodollar, then everybody the dollar had value only because everybody in the world had to purchase oil from OPEC with the U.S. dollar. So that made a demand for dollars. And it also brought a lot of dollars offshore. So a lot of dollars are floating around, probably more off out of the country than in the country. So now Russia is saying, okay, we're not going to do it in dollars anymore. You can buy it in rubles, and so now they're doing the exact same thing that we did with the Middle East, and they also I'm skipping a beat. The reason why they did it is because we offered military protection in the Middle East, and we always said, and I served in the Air Force for 22 years, and I've been in the Middle East quite a bit, and I couldn't understand why they always told us that it's all about the oil. It's all about the oil. Well, really, no, it was all about the dollars, what it was. And I just didn't know until just now. And so now the Russians are coming in, and they're working with Saudi Arabia last summer. They said, hey, we'll protect you. You don't need the United States. They just messed up Afghanistan. And so Saudi Arabia said, yeah, you're right. So there's that, So the petrodollar is being eroded. Now China is saying, we can buy oil and yuans with the yuan with Saudi Arabia. So there's another hit on the dollar. So they're whittling away at it, and it's taking, without the world reserve, we lose our world status as the superpower of the globe.
Because that's what runs everything is the dollar.
Exactly.
And I read an article recently that said that Russia was not experiencing like heavy financial issues, like their economy was not having heavy financial issues, and part of it is because of the oil situation. They really haven't taken, despite all of our so-called heavy sanctions, they aren't really experiencing a serious decrease in their oil sales, and because in my opinion they were prepared to not be using the dollar anymore and to get kicked out of the economies that they were kicked out of. I think they were ready for that. I think they anticipated that was going to happen.
Well, and that's what I was trying to make the case for with the gold. They were preparing for this. I think the Crimea skirmish there and was the test to see what the world would do, and they knew that they knew sanctions they were going to use the dollar against them. It's weaponized, And so now others, like you mentioned earlier about Canada, now other people are starting to say, wait a second, it's my money. No, it's not your money. It never was. That's what people are starting to wake up to. And that's where, we should be protecting ourselves with assets if you can afford them. And gold and silver is a good one, because this is only the beginning of what's happening. And the thing I wanted to say about Russia, and this is one of my blogs, is
what's your blog? Give that out so people can check it out. I'm sure there's some great stuff there.
So I created a web page. It's www.moneyplainandsimplebook.com.
Excellent.
And I have a free download of the first chapter and the intro of the book. I have a page of recommendations to read after you read my book, and then I have a place to buy the book if you need it. It's online at Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all other places. And then there's a blog page and there's a contact me page. So I'm always open to whatever people want me to break down or tell me anything. So, but on my blog page is I talked about the let's see, where was I?
You okay?
No, yeah, I'm trying to rewind. I got let's see. We're talking about Russia. What I did want to say was Russia was. I look at them like the United States. We live in high rises. Metaphorically, and the Russians live in like one-story houses. So as far as their living standards, so when their economy would crash, they wouldn't fall very far. But when we fall, we're going to hit hard because our standard of living is so much higher. So I was just reinforcing what you were saying earlier. They're going to survive this because they're already there. They're not far.
That makes so much sense. That is a perfect place to break, because my producer said a second ago that we have, probably about a minute ago, that we had a minute left. So we're going to take a commercial break, and I can't wait to talk about why us right-wingers, 'cause my audience knows I'm kind of right-wing, why we're always saying taxation is theft, because it is. So I want to talk about that next on the other side of the break. We're on with Stephen J. Spence. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Money Talk with Melanie on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back. Our second hour guest we are speaking with is Stephen J. Spence. Very excited to talk to him this evening. He really is pulling back the curtain behind our monetary system, which is why I was so excited to have him on. This is, just very important information for you to have when it comes to financial literacy and just seeing it's a shell game. And you need to know how the elite among us are moving the shells around our monetary system. And when you hear the political pundits and the economic experts talking about certain things, you need to understand what they're talking about. And if you know nothing about economics, in my opinion, Stephen Spence's book, Money Plain and Simple, What the Institutions and the Elite Don't Want You to Know, is an excellent place to start. Very easy read, very simple, lives up to its name. So before the break, I said we were going to talk about why you hear some crazy people. I used to think that people who said taxation is theft were crazy. Like I really used to think that. Okay, yeah, taxation is theft. But then when you actually do the research, you're like, okay, taxation really is legitimately theft. We left England for so much less egregious stuff that they did with taxes. Like what, 2% tax on tea? We were like, we're out.
Yeah, that's crazy. The thing is that a lot of people, let's just say I was in the lower income class and I always got a child care credit or what was the other one? Anyways, I would get money back, right? Money I didn't put in. I would get all my money back and put in. But in the end, then you start making some money. And then it was like, wait a second.
Right.
Where's all this money going, And it's really... it seems like sometimes it's used against you, in these programs that they're bringing out and stuff. But the most important tax is the hidden tax. That my point is, some people don't even care about taxes because they don't pay any taxes, right?
Exactly.
But the lie, that's a lie, right? Because inflation is a tax. And that's a tax on overspending or over creating currency. So everybody is paying taxes, and that's why everybody should be paying attention. Because and I believe, I wrote this in the book, what I've come to learn is they don't really need to charge us taxes. I mean, in this Keynesian system that we're in, because they just we're always operating in a deficit. Where's that money come from?
Right.
You know?
Right.
And people don't ask that question. And so I think it's important that. Actually, I don't know if and this is almost a quote from my book, is I don't know if they don't know this or they are just flat out stupid. The politicians.
I'm convinced that some politicians literally don't know.
Exactly.
Like, you can't be that stupid. Like, I'm convinced that some politicians really don't know. I think they really don't know and don't understand. I think they don't understand the way our economy works. Just the way they talk. Like, either they are really ignorant to the way things work, or they think or they know that the electorate is. Mm-hmm. Just by the way they speak to us.
You hear it mostly with these, and the whole thing is the other thing to remember is we like to bash the Fed and on their policies, but they're happy to accommodate whatever Congress approves. And we always have to remember our politicians that we elected are the ones giving the green light to spend. And so that's something to be really cognizant of. That's one big part of it, I believe. But
what if instead of saying, okay, we're going to pass a bill where we're going to spend $3 billion to do X, Y, Z. But by the way, we're borrowing that $3 billion from China. Are you still good with that? Mm-hmm. Like, that's the part that we don't, that the politicians never, ever tell the electorate. Like, we're going to give you all this money, but we're borrowing that money from China, who, if they had their way, they would come take us over in a New York minute. And as soon as they have the opportunity, they're going to. They really are an adversary and the enemy. I mean,
I heard a saying, what was it? They're making the rope that we're going to hang ourselves with.
They certainly are. And so, then you have to ask yourself, would the public be good with us passing those kind of laws and spending that kind of money if they knew that that's what we were doing, and without doing what every person does every month when they sit at their table, which is to really do a thorough examination of how they're spending and say, where can I cut back first? Where's the waste? And the government just never seems to do that.
No, it's fiscal responsibility, and the answer is always tax more. We need more money. But the thing is that that's just to tell the people to tax more. The Fed is happy to lend it. The Treasury, all they got to do is print the bonds, and they sell it to, it's a money game. It's a shell game, just like you said. It's like, my biggest concern about all of this, because the dollar is very close within I don't know. I'm always early to the party, but I would say within a couple of years, the dollar's probably going to be really bad shape. And we might, with this Russian economic war, if they're successful, it might be accelerated. But they won't be able to do this anymore. So what happened? What's it look like? And so my thing is, we don't want these people to be on the other side running the game again. This system, these people need to go,
It's problematic. And even the way, and this is, you have to know what you're listening to, even the way the government, and particularly politicians, describe budgeting. When they talk about a budget, and they say that we're cutting this budget, I'm sure you're aware of this, but I don't think the public at large is aware that when they say that they're cutting a budget, really what they mean is it's going to stay the same as last year, because in the government's mind, if you're not increasing the budget, that's a budget cut in their heads. Like, nowhere else on the planet is that a budget cut, but in a government's head, that's a budget cut.
Well, it's gotten so big. It's just like I worked for a large defense contractor, and the company gets so big. It's just everything's just a process. You don't know what the left hand's doing to the it just gets lost. And so when you look at our government, there's no way any one person could stay on top of what everybody's doing. It's just overwhelming.
Oh, well, it's huge. I think I've told this story before on the show. I used to do freelance writing for a political news site called the Horn News, and one of the articles I wrote was on government regulation. And part of what the editor wanted me to do was find out how many regulations, just regulations, that we have on the books, that the federal government has on the books. And I consider myself to be a fairly decent researcher. I couldn't find the answer. And then when I finally did find the answer, was that the government literally doesn't know. What we do, they literally don't know how many regulations they have. What we do know is that we get up to 8,000 new regulations a year, something like that. And with every law that's passed, there's regulators that write the regulations to those laws. And that's how things get up. That's why our court system is such a hot mess. Because when those regulations conflict with each other, then that's how you end up in court trying to settle those things. But that's insane. That's how you know our government is entirely too... We have computers now. You're telling me you can't do a search now among the laws and regulations? It's that big that you can't see before you pass a law whether or not it's going to conflict with another law, and then don't pass it until you fix that? To me, that would seem to be a more efficient way to pass a law. But that's not the way our government does it.
No, and I know when I worked with the FAA at an airline, and we had a maintenance manual that we had to they had to link to other manuals, and so one manual, if you change one thing in one manual, you have to change another. And we're dealing with 5 manuals, and it was all done through memory. It was like, we got to change it over here now. Change this, that changes that. And da, da, da. I can only imagine how messed up that is in the government with 8,000 a year.
Yeah, it's a mess. I couldn't believe it was that high, and I couldn't believe I couldn't find the answer to that question. And there's a federal website, because there's sunshine laws and things like that, and there's a federal website where you can get these are the new regulations that were passed. But it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. The government is too big, and when you are spending public money, you're supposed to be accountable for that.
Yeah.
And they're not. They're completely not accountable at all.
Yeah, and going back to speaking of that means money, right? It's spent money, or I should say currency, but it's still stuff that people need to survive on. And it almost seems like I just moved down here a few years ago from Atlanta, and I used to drive around in my town. It was just outside of the outskirts of Atlanta, but still part of Atlanta. It was just so impoverished, and I just couldn't believe the disparity. And then when you think about all the money that's wasted on these programs and stuff, and all the people that are hurting, I'm not saying giving it out is the answer, but there's got to be a better way.
I think there has to be a better way too. We were I was just talking earlier about that. We were talking about how they legalized marijuana in a lot of places yesterday, and so a lot of people were buying their marijuana today. And we're talking about how it's going to be highly taxed, and how the government, whenever they do something like this, they always say that it's going to benefit the people. And I was like, the person I was talking to is a lot younger than me, and I said, I'm way too jaded for that, and I don't trust the government. It's not going to. I don't trust them because I've lived long enough to see the government tell us that about a ton of things, and that not be true.
When the government is down to selling drugs to make money, you're in bad shape.
We might have a problem, right? When the government's like, how about we sell weed? How about we do that and make some money? Yeah, you have a valid point.
The same thing with gambling. There's so many people, so many lives and families are trash. I'm not saying everybody, but of course, and I'm kind of a believer that you should be able to control yourself as well, but that isn't always true for everybody either. So I'm on the fence about all of this legality and stuff, but to sell it to somebody for more taxes and to pay for these programs, you're probably putting the people that are buying the stuff, putting them in those programs in the end.
Well, that's true. That's exactly actually what I use as an example. We live near Atlantic City. I'm actually in Cape May, New Jersey, and I remember 30 years or so ago when they introduced the casinos into Atlantic City, and they said it was going to be great for the people. I said, "How's Atlantic City doing? How are they doing? Not so hot." And the government told us that it was going to be, such a boon for the people of Atlantic City, and their way of life was going to be so much better if we allow these casinos to come here. And that's not what happened. And they have all that tax money. So I don't, But before we go, I definitely want to talk about the Going Digital chapter and talk about the fact that it was created. I love how you start off with this Milton Friedman quote about the black market, because that's really where digital currency started and was the whole purpose. But talk a little bit about that.
Well, so I don't get too deep into cryptocurrencies, but the thing is that's where we're going to go, and everybody should start paying attention to it, or you're going to be left behind. Because if it's going to be the central bank digital currency, or the Fed coin, or whatever you want to call it, or Bitcoin, or something's going to rise up. I can't say what it is. I actually throttled back on my investments in cryptocurrency because I don't know where it's going to land, and it's very volatile right now. Bitcoin last year went up to its all-time high at $69,000 and then crashed to 40. It's floating now, and it's not moving. It's just up and down between like 37 and 44, up and down, up and down, up and down. So the thing is, we are already being led in that direction. If you go digital with the central banks, and understand, this is so important to understand, is that these people do not, or the elites, the bankers, do not want to give up control of the money. That's how they control you. That's how they control the world. Remember what I said in the beginning, debt slavery. So when you spend, like if you want to pay a kid to mow your grass, $5 or $20, whatever it is, it's going to be digital swap, and he's going to get taxed, and you're that transaction. There's no private. You want to give your grandchild, a gift of $20 or something for a birthday. That's going to be tracked. It's going to be taxed, and you might have diabetes and you want to cheat and have a soda. They say, no, you can't buy that because it's got sugar in that Coke or something. And you can't have that. There's just this. We're inviting this for ease. We're inviting this control into our lives. We really got to be careful about what we give up for our freedoms.
That is true. That is very true, and it's a little scary. I mean, the whole point of the advent of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and digital currency was to get the government out of our business, and it's not regulated. And what really scares me as a citizen of the United States is our Congress barely understands how social media works. Mm-hmm. So if they're going to start regulating digital currency, they barely understand Facebook. You really think they're going to understand blockchain technology? We really need to get some younger people in Congress who understand this stuff.
Well, let me tell you, this and I put this in my book. I listed the bill and everything in 2020 when they were doing the COVID Relief Act. They were going to launch the Fed coin already. So the bill is written. It's just waiting for the crisis to be entered. So just know that, and we just need to make sure we have smart people to know what they're doing. I'm telling you, we give up our freedoms on our money, we'll never get it back.
Never. No way. No way.
And I wrote a blog on this the other day because I just went through my taxes and it's titled "My Accountant Asked Me," and what it was he asked me how much Bitcoin I bought or sold, or cryptocurrency I should say, on my taxes. And I'm like, just like you said, this is supposed to be decentralized and not centralized, and now the government's got their hands into that. So that was the whole attractiveness. That's why I got out of crypto, because the government is locking it down. And again, it's competition to the dollar. So I do know that they never asked me how much gold or silver I had.
Yep.
So
that is very true. Wink, wink. Tell everybody. Tell everybody. I got your virtual wink over here. Tell people where to buy the book, where they can follow you on any social media, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so the best place, again, is my website. Everything is there. On the front page, the first page of my homepage is reviews, free downloads of the book for the first chapter, and that's www.moneyplainandsimplebook.com. And then if you want to reach out to me more through email, you can do that. And I'm on LinkedIn under Stephen J. Spence.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being on Money Talk with Melanie this evening. I really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure.
Just an excellent job. Thanks so much. Have a great night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Money Talk with Melanie.
Money Talk with Melanie.
Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. I want to thank my guests, Wes Azzaidani and Stephen J. Spence. Thank you so much for being on the show this evening. And my main man behind the board, John, thank you so much for tolerating me this evening. On the next Money Talk with Melanie, Pam Hill, founder and CEO of My Smart Cousin, will talk to us about real estate investing made easy. Very exciting to have her on the show. Remember, all of this is very important because after all, it's your money.